Trees are the foundation of forests and provide a rich source of food for humans and animals. However, the most powerful part of this organism lies underground. If we walk through lush forests regularly, the trees increase our vibrancy. We feel physically and psychologically good, and they can even cure a variety of diseases. Dr. Suzanne Simard of the University of British Columbia has been researching how trees communicate for more than 30 years. She proved that trees belonging to the same species interact with each other and help each other survive. When we walk through a forest, we see a multitude of trees, but there's much more that we cannot see directly with our eyes, because beneath the Earth's surface, there's a world with almost infinite biological paths that connect the trees to each other and enables them to communicate like a single organism. Simard and her team discovered that the entire forest is traversed by an underground network of mycorrhizal fungi. A handful of earth can contain miles of tiny threads. These fungal threads form a network. The so-called mycelium forms a symbiosis with the tree roots. In other words, a connection for mutual benefit. This is how the dense underground network can transport carbon from one tree to another when it's needed. All trees work together and thus send a large amount of information and nutrients, as if the entire forest were a unified organism. Trees are very social beings who speak a common language. They do not compete with their own species. On the contrary, they support each other, have developed a very high group consciousness, and live in a social network. This theory is also supported by biologist Susan Dudley of McMaster University. She investigated the plant Impatiens pallida, which belongs to the balsam family, to see how well it can recognize close relatives, and came to a really interesting conclusion. The researcher discovered that the reaction of the plant depended on whether it grew up with related or foreign plants. With foreign plants, the plant stopped allocating resources to its roots or leaves. However, the opposite happens with close relatives. Then it quickly spreads out its roots, which then extend over a larger area. According to Susan Simard, trees have feelings and can feel pain or anxiety. If one of them is attacked or injured by insects or a human being, the latter warns the others so that they can prepare themselves for a possible threat. The American chemist and zoologist Davy Rhodes infected a number of pastures with poisonous caterpillars, with the intention that these trees would protect themselves from them. To defend itself, the willow increased its chlorogenic acid content, which is toxic to the caterpillars, and they died. The strange thing was that a group of nearby uninfected pastures also protected themselves from a possible attack by increasing their levels of chlorogenic acid also. This showed that there was some kind of communication between the pastures. Something very similar happens with acacia trees. As soon as a giraffe starts feeding on them, the defense reaction begins and tannins are released into the leaves, which can be fatal for herbivores. And not only that, the giraffes can't eat from any other tree in the forest because all of a sudden they've all started to produce the poison, which again indicates some kind of understanding. 20 years ago, another scientist, the Frenchman Paul Carreau, discovered that an oak tree infested with caterpillars produces large amounts of tannin to block the growth of larvae. Interestingly, the walnut tree also uses a strategy to keep its competitors away. In its leaves, a substance is formed that is converted into a toxic substance when it decomposes. This suppresses the growth of other trees. Susan Simard also talks about the mother trees. She says it is the big old trees that attract all the attention when we enter a forest. Interestingly, they're also linked to the trees of other various species all around. These trees take care of their offspring like a large family. There is a transfer of resources and information from the oldest to the newest. It's unfortunate that when trees are felled, the role of mother trees as knowledge carriers to the new generation is ignored. Forest ecosystems are very complex. Through various experiments, it's been found that the root system of trees, and forests in particular, resembles our brain. The human brain consists of neurons and axons. The nerve cells can connect physically as well as metaphysically because they exchange information and depend on each other. Stefano Mancuso is a professor at the University of Florence and one of the world's leading authorities in plant neurobiology. Mancuso believes that plants are very intelligent beings because intelligence is used to solve problems, and plants can do that very well. He founded the International Laboratory for Plant Neurobiology, where he and his team have been conducting research for 10 years. Mancuso is convinced that plants are the basis of human life because they act as a link between the sun and the earth. The solar energy is absorbed by the plants and converted into chemical energy, and that's the basis for all food of animals and humans. Without the plants, we wouldn't have an energy source and we couldn't exist. Research has shown that plants and animals have an active cycle during the day and rest at night. In addition, they communicate constantly through volatile molecules. So when we smell the scent of a flower, we smell a message that the flower sends to insects, or it sends information to other flowers when it feels threatened. Mancuso and his team were able to prove that plants perceive physical and chemical parameters that animals cannot. Another revolutionary researcher in this field is Dr. Monica Galliano of the Evolutionary Biology Center at the University of Western Australia. Together with Stefano Mancuso and nanobiologist Professor Daniel Robert, Galliano discovered that plants react to sounds and use sounds to communicate with each other. The researchers found that the roots of a maize plant make regular clicking sounds. People cannot hear the sounds of a plant because they communicate through infrasound. The frequencies are so low that they cannot be perceived by us, but this does not mean that these sounds do not exist. We know that a sound is produced by vibration. In terms of the plant, this means that only a small amount of energy is needed to make a sound. According to researchers, plants have acoustic sensors. The membrane of a cell plant reacts to vibrations in a very similar way to our human cells. A research team from Oxford University discovered that lawn and pea plants recognize when neighboring plants suffer from water deficiency, and then close the pores of their leaves even if they don't lack water. If they notice after a few hours that the drought has not reached them, their pores are opened again. Another very interesting experiment was carried out in 1966 by CIA agent Cleve Baxter, a lie detector specialist. He had the idea of connecting his plant to the lie detector and then watering it. To his astonishment, he noticed that the needle only broke for a short time, just as it did for a person who was aroused, as he knew from his many interrogations. Now Baxter wanted to find out if the plant showed any other reactions. Would it have feelings? He was thinking about the reactions of people when they feel threatened. Then he had the idea of lighting a leaf on the plant. Suddenly, the detector struck strongly and drew a very sharp curve. The amazing thing was that Baxter hadn't even touched the plant. He wasn't even near it, and he had only thought of burning it. Could the plant read his mind and therefore felt threatened? Baxter carried out many other experiments with his polygraph and achieved incredible results. For example, a plant could identify the murderer of its owner, or a plant had some kind of memory and recognized who had harmed it in the past. The wisdom of trees and plants is known to shamans all over the world. They can contact them and talk to them, asking them for advice on how to cure certain diseases. Already in the 4th century BC, the Greek scientist Aristotle claimed that plants had souls, although he did not believe that they were actually sentient. Additionally, Hippocrates, the father of medicine, advised his disciples to talk to plants because they have the knowledge of healing. Much later, in the 18th century, the Swede Carlos Linnau, a pioneer of modern botany, said that plants are like animals, only without movements. But at the beginning of the 20th century, the The Viennese Raoul Heinrich Francais went one step further and claimed that plants move as much as animals, but at much slower speeds. Another exceptional experiment by the Royal Horticultural Society has shown that talking with plants promotes faster growth and a better yield. Currently, several studies have shown that even a view from the hospital room into the country accelerates the healing process in freshly operated patients and leads to fewer complications. It has also been shown that ADHD and hyperactivity improve in children when they have access to nature. Furthermore, it has been proven that more violent people lived in areas without greenery than in areas with trees and plants. It's believed that plants can help reduce aggression. The fact is that trees need our care, but much more, we humans need their contact to boost the vibrations and reconnect with our beautiful planet, especially now that humanity is in a state of great transformation.